What? It was the most distressing sight. I knew, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that my Kodachi was driven into his flesh. It would have worked, but, yeah, no, we kind of know that he had already. Yet he had neither the scratch nor a drop of blood on him. My Kodachi, however, was stained with a thick film of scarlet blood. A little tear appeared on the side of Father's kimono. A little tear appeared on the side of Father's kimono as well. But for some mysterious reason, his flesh had sealed. Oh no. Should have aimed for the heart. Father barked with smug laughter.
素晴らしい。素晴らしいぞ、落ち水の力は。傷が治るのが早いどころではない。小立ちで刺されても痛みすらない。
He continued to laugh maniacally to himself, and helplessness began to sink in. The fears around us continued closing in, making me feel so small and pathetic. No! Father! I could barely squeak out a sentence.
てめえ、羅刹になりやがったな。
ああ、そうとも。この力さえあれば恐れるものなど何もないのだ。落ち水さえあればこの国を我が手に収めることなどたやすい。羅刹は火の元を強くするぞ。最後の一兵になっても決して引かず戦い続ける本物の戦士の国にな。
Father! Who was this man? I gently flicked my Kodachi, swatting off some of the blood from it, and got into an offensive stance. From behind me came Sanosuke, who patted my shoulder and gestured me to stay still.
やめとけ。お前には人は殺せねえよ。
But... Without another word, he stepped in front of me and pointed his spear in Father's direction. He kept his back facing me as he spoke.
親殺しの罪は俺が背負ってやる。恨み事なら後で何十回でも聞いてやる。だから目を閉じてろ。
Sanosuke murmured his advice to me quietly. There was no way I couldn't see this for myself. He and I were committed to one another. It meant our lives were inseparable, and I couldn't bear to have the man I loved shoulder the burden of killing my father as I watched from the sidelines.
人間が何をするつもりです？その体に銃弾一発でも受ければすぐに戦えなくなる身だというのに。
Father twiddled his fingers mischievously, cackling at Sanosuke with the face of a true demon. Then he slipped his hand into his pocket. Sanosuke, watch out! Father pulled a fistful of medical scalpels from out of his pocket and threw them at Sanosuke as one would a kunai. Sanosuke deflected 3 speeding scalpels by spitting his spear reflexively.
人間にしてはなかなかの腕ではないか。これならどうかね。
Father arranged 4 scalpels in each of his hands in the shape of a fan. He flashed a malicious grin and flung all 8 of the knives towards Sanosuke. 4 of them bounced off of Sanosuke's spear as he swiftly parried the incoming blades, but... one of them pierced through the flesh of his right hand, with which he was using to carry his spear. Another landed on his left bicep, and Sanosuke bit his lip as he grimaced in pain. I instinctively covered my eyes. But the scalpel was enough to severely injure his hand that he wouldn't be able to wield his spear.
これはいい。利き手が使えなくなればもう戦いなど続けられまい。それにしてもその槍の腕前、このまま死なせてしまうにはちと惜しい。どうだね、落ち水を飲まないか。お前ならいい兵隊になってくれそうだ。
Sasuke mustered a confident smile through gritting teeth. It would take far more than Father's taunting to convince him to turn over to the dark side.
まがいものの強さには興味ねえって言っただろう。それにな。
Sasuke reached his left hand over to where the scalpel was stuck in his right hand. He curled his fingers gingerly around the scalpel and yanked it out, and blood trickled from the wound.
こんなチャチいおもちゃが刺さったくらいで槍を握れなくなるなんてことはねえよ。原田佐之助をなめんじゃねえ。
Never had I seen anyone declare the result so fiercely. His amber eyes were ablaze with determination. It was a daring smile akin to a swashbuckler.
今度はこっちから行かせてもらうからな。
Sasuke pointed his spear forwards with his hands, drenched in blood, and lunged forward with all of his might. Although Father gained powers from drinking the water of life, they were no substitute for actual experience on the battlefield. He lacked the reflexes to dodge Sasuke's spear. I watched the tip of Sasuke's spear pierce through Father's spine, coated in a dark crimson liquid. As he pulled the spear from Father's body, a splash of blood splattered onto the floor behind Father's feet. Just as quickly as the wound was inflicted, however, it had sealed itself back up again.
治ったともあっという間に。槍で疲れたのに痛みなど全くない。
Nothing could deter Father's sadistic laughter, and he continued to fling scalpels at Sasuke.
くそ。
Father moved slightly closer to Sasuke, who thrust his spear into Father's body relentlessly. Not even repeated stab wounds could phase Father, and he simply grinned in response to Sasuke's seemingly futile efforts.
どうしたのだね。蚊に刺されたほどの痛みも感じない。
A thick layer of Father's blood was smeared over his own body, and he continued laughing, charging at Sasuke like nothing had happened. He became consumed by madness, losing what remained of his humanity with each step. Fatigue was beginning to set in for Sasuke, as his swings became dull and lifeless after a period.
おや、もう限界かね。実に惜しい。もしお前が羅刹だったら確実に私を仕留めることができていただろうに。人間というのは実に哀れな存在だな。
All of Sasuke's adrenaline was disappearing, and soon his movements were sluggish, lazily swatting away at Father with sore arms. Oh no, I have to save Sasuke!
それではお前のムクロを私が育てた羅刹の血肉へと変えてあげよう。
Father grinned victoriously, pulling from his pocket another group of 8 scalpels. He cocked his hands back to aim his scalpels for Sasuke's weakening body. The very next moment,
こいつを待ってたんだ。
Sasuke grinned, speaking in an eager, low tone. I nearly shut my eyes out of horror. Father hadn't been quick enough to react, and Sasuke's spear pierced straight into his heart. Father's eyes were wide and glossy. He stood frozen to the spot. The spear had punctured through him completely, and from behind him you could see the tip of the spear peeking out. Because of where it had struck him, the spear pulsed to the rhythm of father's heartbeat.
「羅刹ってのは心臓を貫けば殺せるんだろう。人間より体力がある分長く苦しむことになるんだろうな。身から出たサビってやつか。」
Blood gushed from father's mouth, dribbling from the side of his lips in a pathetic display. His hand fluttered in the air pitifully, and he had his regenerative powers to thank for not being able to enjoy a swift death.
千鶴
From out of the blue, father called out to me.
お前は親を見殺しにするのか。
Watching his heartless monster, whom I used to call father, writhe before me in pain. Memories of my childhood came flooding back to me. His kind, inviting demeanor, his patience. Although somewhere along the way, he seemed to lose a part of himself. Nothing could change the fact that he raised me. Please, pass peacefully. Tears began to well behind my eyes as I clapped my hands together and prayed. I suppose there was no way to anticipate how agonizing watching him die would be. For me, it was the first time I ever witnessed the last embers of someone's life die out. Sanosuke suddenly thrusted his spear more deeply into father's chest. The chilling sound made my hair stand. Once more, father coughed up a mouthful of blood. Sanosuke yanked a spear from out of father's chest, only to immediately drive it back into the same spot with greater intensity.
あんたを殺したのは他の誰でもねえ。この俺だ。てめえの娘に親殺しの罪なんて着せようとしてんじゃねえよ。あんたにはもうこいつの親を名乗る資格なんてねえ。
Sanosuke kept his composure, even as a fresh splash of blood landed on his cheek. Once he could confirm that father was no longer breathing, Sanosuke pulled the spear from out of where father's heart used to beat. It was so decisive and forceful. A realization came to me inexplicably as I imagined how many other times Sanosuke may have been confronted with a similar situation on the battlefield in his past. It was a dark thought, one I had never considered. My face was drenched with tears. I fell to my knees on the cold earth, scraping them as they landed. It felt like something extracted my soul from my chest, leaving behind an empty shell of a person incapable of happiness.
目閉じてろって言ったじゃねえか。どうして言うことを聞かなかった？
Because speaking became difficult. My throat was unclosing, perhaps as an expression of panic. But I had to say one thing. Because this was something I needed to do. I shouldn't have tasked you with this burden alone, Sanosuke. I wish we could have dealt with it together. Sanosuke tenderly wrapped his arms around me. As he pulled me into his chest, I rested my head against him, sobbing uncontrollably.
行動さんを切るところなんて、お前にだけは見られたくなかったんだけどな。もしかして幻滅したか？
Yeah. I could just as easily say that I am as responsible for killing my father as Sanosuke was. He just happened to be quicker. He comforted me, stroking my hair softly as I nestled myself against his soft, muscular chest. We stood quietly in each other's embrace. After a while, Shiranui emerged from behind the bushes.
こっちも片付いたみてえだな。
おう、とりあえずこれで新政府軍の羅刹隊は全滅か。
そういうことになるな。
Shiranui answered curtly, and I watched his brow furrow as he scanned our surroundings.
悪いな。長州の連中が迷惑かけちまって。あいつらただ焦ってるだけなんだ。行動が言ってた通り、まだこれから戦わなきゃならねえ相手が5万といて、日本って国が好きだからどうしてもなくしちまいたくねえから無茶をしてでも強くしたがる。
I understand. Shiranui wore a melancholic expression, and suddenly I thought of his old friend, Takasugi. Thinking about how much Shiranui had cared for Takasugi, how much he had sacrificed for his friend's well-being, I had no room to criticize him. Shiranui, I remember you telling us before that you believe you were soulless, but I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, look, everything you've been through, from serving your friend's master to losing Takasugi, and then to now, I'm sure they're all so proud of you. We might have different opinions on what having souls means, but that's how I feel. I remember Shiranui seething with contempt as father mocked Takasugi's death so casually. Something clicked inside of Shiranui, and suddenly he pursued my father at every turn, hoping to thwart him and protect the innocent people of Edo. I think if Takasugi were watching Shiranui from the afterlife, it would have elated him to see his old friend passionately carrying on his legacy. Contrary to what Shiranui may think, I believe the idea of a soul captures something unique and essential to our experience as living beings. We cope with our mortality by reminding ourselves of its frailty. We realize how precious it is when we understand how quickly it can all be taken away. But being able to pass on values, inspiring others to dedicate themselves to something more. In this way, we truly can live forever.
お前はその人間の男と添い遂げるつもりだった。人間なんてすぐに死んじまうぜ。病で、怪我の悪化で、不慮の事故で。鬼とは比べ物にならねえぐらいちっぽけで弱っちくて、取るに足らねえどうしようもねえ生き物だ。
What? I prepared myself to refute Shiranui's claim, but
そうだろうな。人間ってのはあっけねえぐらい簡単にあの世に行っちまう。かけがえのねえ命なんてこの世にはきっとねえ。俺が今日で刺し殺してきた連中もそうだし、もちろん俺自身もそうだ。取るに足らねえ、いつ亡くなってもいい命でしかねえよ。
I knew that Sanosuke was speaking of a hypothetical situation, but having been so recently involved in a near-death encounter, I'd rather he hadn't. Sanosuke! I playfully reprimanded him. Sanosuke winked at me, then turned back to face Shiranui with a kind expression.
ただ、ちっぽけで弱っちくて、すぐ死んじまうようなどうでもいい命だからこそ。与えられた時間を命燃やして精一杯生きるんだと思うぜ。意味がねえなりに意味を見出すためにな。
Shiranui raised an eyebrow at Sanosuke's response to his suggestive musings. After a moment, Shiranui curled his lips into a warm smile.
そういうことを抜かすから俺は人間が嫌いなんだ。てめえは勝手に燃え尽きてりゃいいかもしれねえが、残された者の気持ちってもんも少しは考えやがる。
I hadn't been sure if I was just imagining things, but Shiranoi's poignant comment had a lonesome quality to it that rang honestly to me. It was clear that the memory of his dear friend was something with which he wrestled daily, although he knew they would never meet again. Accepting the truth was another thing entirely. Perhaps even demons could be valued, and no amount of physical prowess or healing powers could shield us from the loss of what matters most to us. Shiranui spun around and began to walk towards the trail surrounding Ueno. Shiranui! What are you going to do now? Where are you going now?
とりあえず長州に戻る。考えてみりゃまだあいつの墓参りもしてなかったからな。
Ah, you're going to Choshu.
ただ今後一切人間どもに関わるつもりはねえ。気に入った仲間を亡くしちまう気持ちなんてもう二度と味わいたくねえからな。
No! Well, that's giving me ideas. But what's going to become of this country? You and my father both mentioned that we'll need to prepare for the tide of foreign influence to keep our independence strong.
そりゃな。新しい日本を作った後、やらなきゃならねえことはたくさんあるはずだ。だけど、そう悪いことにはならねえと思うぜ。
Why is that?
長州の連中がお師匠さんの大和魂とやらを受け継いでるんならなんとかできねえはずねえじゃねえか。どう転がってもそう悪いことにはならねえよ。ま、俺は魂なんてもん信じちゃいねえけどな。
Leaving us with a sardonic remark, Shiranui vanished, this time for good.
そんじゃ俺たちは俺たちの未来を作っていくことにしようぜ。特にお前は今まで辛い思いばっかりしてきたんだ。これから先は楽しいことだけ考えるようにしようぜ。な。
Sanosuke gently slunk his hand around my shoulders. His hand was my totem through all of the trials that we had experienced as a pair. This time, I could touch and feel it all for myself, knowing it brought me a greater happiness than I had ever known beforehand. I rested my hand in his, and the hand of the man I love, and shut my eyes without saying a thing. Final chapter. Oops. Weeks passed and Sanosuke and I crossed the ocean together in search of our new home. We found the quaint, secluded place that Sanosuke had always dreamed of, with a distant memory of war washed into the shoreline of a faraway place. Our home was beside a cliff, and every afternoon we watched the sunset descend into the sparkling horizon, stretching as far as the eye could see. It felt surreal to live the kind of life that, for me, had only existed in conversations. Our dreams came true, and under a foreign sky, I spent my life with my soulmate. It was bliss. I never imagined the possibility of seeing my dreams come to fruition. Of course, none of this would have been possible by myself. The view of the thin fog approaching from the other side of the ocean entranced me. From behind me, I heard a baby crying.
おい千鶴、なんとかしてくれ。こいつ何やっても泣き止まねえんだ。
Okay, be right there. I rushed to where I heard the voice coming from. There stood Sanosuke holding our wailing son tightly in his arms with a panicked expression.
こいつ、俺の何が気に食わねえんだ。
That's the question you ask, Harada?
がいなくなった途端火がついたみてえに泣きわめきやがる。
You're too rough with him, Sanosuke. Babies are delicate. You need to be gentle when you hold them.
そうは言っても男たるものこんなことでビービー泣いてたんじゃ。
Oh, there you go again. You're just going to make him cry.
なんだと。
Ah, there. Don't cry, little one. Be a good boy, okay? I walked over to Sanosuke and stroked our son's face tenderly. His round face was so precious, and after a moment his crying began to calm.
せっかく男に生まれたんだから一角の武士に育ててやりてえと思ってるんだが、今からこの調子じゃ先が思いやられるぜ。
Why are you placing expectations on a child that hasn't even grown his first tooth yet? Besides, there are no more samurai in Japan. At the end of the war, the Imperial Army claimed their victory and instituted the New Age, later known as the Meiji Era. Warriors, merchants, and civilians alike were all formally given equal class status, and samurai were all but extinct as the Age of Swords had ended.
確かに日の本じゃ侍はいらねえもんになっちまったが、まだ侍ってもんを必要としてる場所はあるはずだぜ。広い世界にはな。
You might have a point. I stared intently at our son as he rested in the comfort of Sanosuke's arms. My prayers were answered when he was born a male. As my descendant, demon blood flows through his veins just as it does through mine. Having a daughter would put her at risk in the same way demons sought to abduct me for my blood. Sanosuke furrowed his brow, perhaps noticing the shift in my mood as I stared at our son.
平気だよ。お前のこともこの子のこともこの俺がきっと守ってみせる。たとえこの先何があろうとな。
I looked back at him, gazing into the amber pools of his eyes, and smiled in return. I know. I believe you. Someday our son will become a man. He will meet the woman of his dreams, and maybe even have a child of his own. As this cycle continues, I'm sure that the demon blood will become diluted, leaving behind the ghosts in our past. As long as I should live, I trust Sanosuke to devote his life as a father and husband, and for the first time in my life, I truly felt safe. It inspired me to keep him safe as well, knowing that there was so much we had to look forward to. The two of us glanced at the azure sky dazzling above the ocean. This was our peace, and we earned it. When I turned back to Sanosuke, he winked at me. The only canonical ending with a child. Ah! They got me. And we're done. Oh, we're done.